Welcome to Isthmus Live with journalist and political provocateur and sex columnist Dan Savage.
Journalists get mad when you call me a journalist, so don't go.
Well, we got plenty of journalists here that disagree with that. Dan Savage had spent some formidable years in Madison, and he will be taping his podcast, The Savage Lovecast, and he's also here for Hump Film Festival this weekend, and we'll be talking about those in a little bit. And you do have deep ties to the city. You actually started Savage Love in the back room of 4-Star Video, right?
It was 4-Star Fiction and Video at the time, but yeah, I wrote the first 3-4 months worth of Savage Love sitting in the back, getting paid to do something I wasn't doing, which was good because at the time, The Stranger, our home paper and my home paper in Seattle, wasn't paying me for the column or for anything else. So my employer at the time paid me to write that column.
Well, we have to give the owner at the time of 4-Star a big round of applause.
David Smith, thank you for helping me.
Thank you, David, for launching Dan Savage. And yeah, I guess we first want to just start off when our editor, Judy Davidoff, she interviewed you about a year and a half ago for a cover story when we started publishing your column every week.
Yay.
And you mentioned that you love to live in Madison. Have you had any progress in convincing your husband, Terry, to join you and move back?
Thank God he wasn't here today, because if he had been outside during that squall we just had of sleet and snow and rain and hail, I never would get him to come back. The first time I took him home to Chicago, the first time he was ever in the Midwest, it's very romantic. It was a funeral, which is how we Irish introduce our lovers to our families, and brought him home, but it was in February, and it was 20 below the whole time. So he will never, ever move to Chicago because that first experience was so searing. And if he had been here today, I would never be able to talk him into even visiting.
Oh, it's
Madison.
almost sunny out now and 40. It's not too bad. But what about, of course, like this week is a good time for you to be here because all the Wisconsin presidential candidate, or the regular presidential candidates are here invading the state.
President of Wisconsin.
Yes.
You know, if it was just president of Wisconsin, Sanders would have it locked the fuck up, right?
Well, we'll see on Tuesday.
Although you motherfuckers keep electing that Scott Walker asshole. Not you motherfuckers individually, but you motherfuckers collectively.
Well, I might have to interview that motherfucker, so I have to be careful about talking about him. So Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, they've been here. Hillary Clinton was just down the block. Bernie Sanders is like moving in this week and is a third rally this weekend. So both Cruz and Sanders, they want really to make Wisconsin their comeback state. What do you think about the rise of Donald Trump and just your thoughts on the election so far?
Well, Donald Trump is the Republicans' Gollum. They built him. They really did. Donald Trump just took their racist, hateful dog whistle politics and started shouting what they only hinted at. There was a great SNL skit where they had Jason Sudeikis playing Mitt Romney condemning Donald Trump for saying racist things because Republicans are only supposed to imply them. And that's the diff. And it's really a dangerous moment politically and culturally, I think. And I dread the prospect of a Ted Cruz presidency, but I dread more the prospect of a Donald Trump general election candidacy. People will get hurt. People will get killed if Donald Trump is the nominee. This brown shirty crap that he's unleashed will metastasize, and I'm really, really freaked out and worried. So please join me in pledging to support the Democratic nominee, whoever the fuck it is, whether it's the one you want or the one you don't. I'm just, you know, I'm hearing from a lot of folks that I agree with politically about absolutely everything, that they will sit it out or vote green or not vote or write in Bernie if it's not Bernie. You don't hear a lot of that from the Hillary side, but you do hear some of it. And from the Hillary side, you heard that in 2008. You heard a lot of Puma. It was called Party Unity My Ass in 2008. People in Hillary's side saying that if Obama got the nomination, they weren't going to vote for him. And they came around in the end. So I'm hoping that the Bernie or Busters also come around in the end. There wasn't a big Puma vote for Romney in 2008. But it's deeply, deeply concerning. The lesser of two evils is less evil. So let's vote for the less evil in the world.
Well, good advice in general, right?
That'll be Hillary if Bernie's your guy.
What about like...
And Bernie's my guy. I describe myself frequently. Sorry to interrupt. I wrote something critical of a line of attack that people were using to go after Hillary Clinton, and I was accused of being in the tank for Hillary Clinton loudly and angrily for a long time. And then I wrote something weeks later, or months later, critical of Hillary Clinton for that idiotic thing she said about HIV/AIDS and Nancy Reagan being an AIDS activist. And then I got all this anger from people that I was in the tank for Bernie Sanders. So I'm in both tanks. I like to describe myself as bitanksual. And I think we should all be bitanksual. We can have a preference, as many bisexual people do, for one gender or the other, but in the end, let's fuck them both. Let's sleep with both those folks. Let's have a three-way. Bernie and Hillary on the same ticket. I would vote for that in a heartbeat.
Well, we'll see if that happens. But Trump and Cruz, like we have been covering the elections and stuff, and we talked to some of their voters, and there's a lot about how there's this pushback about political correctness. Now, this is something that you've received criticism about and not being PC enough. And I mean, what is I guess the difference between, or how do you mitigate the difference between tolerance and just being straight talk, right?
Oh my God, I don't know. It's like that definition of pornography. The Supreme Court, one of the people on the Supreme Court said that you know porn when you see it. What's the difference between being un-PC or being straightforward and being a hateful monster? Well, you kind of have to use your judgment. We kind of know it when we see it. And Trump isn't PC. Trump is.
But don't you think sometimes maybe you haven't been PC?
Oh, absolutely. I haven't been PC, but there's sometimes that you can't be. But anyway, are you comparing me to Donald Trump?
No. I don't know what I'm comparing you to right now. No, I guess just that, like kind of you said with that backlash when you're in the tank for Bernie, there's just these the emotions are just so high, and there feels like people are purist in a lot of ways.
The emotions are high, but the people are not. That's the problem. If everyone would just smoke up and chill out and support the person you want to support, and then let's see who wins the primary, and then support the nominee.
Well, we might have to jump to one of these questions that just remind me from let's see, it's Bolt Upright on Instagram said, would you please consider running for president?
No. I had somebody.
The Republican convention might be an open one, so
yeah, right.
There's a little bit of a window for you.
Gaping open. I had somebody try to recruit me to run for Congress in Seattle, where I live, and the district that I live in. And I refused to even entertain it for two reasons. First of all, I can't make that face that my friends who are politicians. My friend, I've known Ed Murray, who's now the mayor of Seattle, for 27 years. And I have other friends who are elected officials. And they have to make this face while they listen to someone who's a moron say moronic things with this concerned and interested and, oh, you may have a point face, on the dais during public testimony or when they encounter constituents. And I can't make that face. My face goes... my eyes roll before I even know that they're moving, and so I don't have the.
This might be your year,
demeanor or comportment to be an elected official. So.
Okay, well, we got another question for you from Karen Miskamin. She submitted this on Isthmus.com. So, do you have any advice for sexual partners who are on the autistic spectrum? It can be especially tricky for autistic folks to communicate when they've been inadvertently triggered outside their boundaries. So, she needs some ideas.
The fun thing, or one of the dirty little secrets of the advice racket, is you appear omniscient. It seems as if you have all the answers because you don't print the questions you don't have answers for. Mm-hmm. Or you go find somebody who has the answer and then you fold it into your response like you knew it all along or knew that person all along. So if I actually got that question at Savage Love and I was going to use it, I would start Googling. I would start writing to my friends who are academics and researchers to get a reference to someone who does writing or research in the area of autism and relationships and sex, and then I would present that person like I knew them all along and present the information I gleaned as if I knew it all along. So I don't have an answer for that question.
But you have to do that a lot, though. It ends up being kind of a research project.
Yeah, I've always said that the column is as much as an education. Yeah, I've always said the column is as much an education for me as it is for readers. And that would be an example. I haven't really covered that.
All right, well, get on it, Dan.
I will get on it.
Okay, all right, good. We got Regan Jacobson. This one you should be able to answer. How do I get my wonderful GGG but very vanilla Midwestern husband to give BDSM a try? Do you need me to repeat that?
No. I'm just remembering what I said to my husband. there are some things, as the wonderful phrase that Emily Yoffe coined when she was Dear Prudence, It's Late. Some things are libido killers. Like sometimes people have an interest or a kink or something they want to explore or scenario that, however GGG their partner is, they just can't go there because it's not just not something that does anything for them. It's something that does the opposite of turn on for them. And so you have to draw him out on that subject. Maybe BDSM or any sort of power exchange when it's blown up into, cops and robbers for grown-ups with your pants off, which is what BDSM is. Anything like that blown up to that extreme for him is triggering or whatever, and it's kind of a libido-killing no-go. And so then you have another conversation about, there's this thing I want to experience, and is the price of admission that I have to pay to be with you is I never get to do that, or is the price of admission that you have to pay to be with me is that you're going to give me permission to do that to somebody else? So you can have the outsourcing conversation about BDSM and kink with him, because sometimes when people have these conversations about kink, if the person you're with is the only person you're allowed to be erotic with, intimate with, sexual with ever, they're really on the hook for everything. And it can be a relief sometime to say to somebody, oh, you have that foot fetish kink and there's a foot model party in town this weekend? Go. Go. And maybe he can get there where the BDSM things you want to experience, maybe without full intercourse, maybe without oral sex, maybe without any mutual masturbation or anything. You can go experience those things at a kink club or with somebody that you can find through Munches or the internet who's kinky. Maybe that's the solution, not pressuring him or getting him to do something he's not into or doesn't want to do, but getting buy-off from him that there are some things that you guys can allow to happen outside the relationship can be the solution.
You're pretty good at this, Dan. You know that? Okay.
But also I would say, if you've listened to the podcast, you've probably heard me say this a billion times. There are two types of people that you meet at big kink events, at IML in Chicago or Thunder in the Mountains, all these like big kink conventions and swingers conventions. There are two types of people. You meet people who were kinky always. The guys and the women who were tying themselves up when they were 12 years old and masturbating about it. And you meet the people who fell in love with those people, who then, tiptoed into it, baby steps, very gradually, got into it and, enjoying their partner's enjoyment awakened in them a real interest and pleasure in kink and BDSM or swinging or furries or feet or whatever. So like open the door to him about your kinks and maybe he'll walk through, but nobody likes to be shoved through the door.
Okay, we got another question. This one's from Gen X Wisco. Besides a permission slip from his wife, how do you really know if he's in a monogamous relationship or marriage?
You can't even know with a permission slip from his wife. There are people who can draw a $20 bill that someone will accept at the bank. So there are people, forging a permission slip or an email from a wife saying, I'm down, is comparatively simple. You have to get to know the person well enough to have some sense of whether they're bullshitting you or not. And you can't really ever know for sure. You can't rule out your spouse having a secret second family in another state. So you really can't rule out maybe this isn't okay, but you have to use your best judgment and look for the clues. We just had a call on the podcast from someone who is who has a boyfriend who says he's in an open marriage, that his wife is fine with it, but she's not allowed to call him ever. And they only see each other when he is on the road and then he flies her into wherever he is. It's like, no, come on, use your common sense. That's bullshit. If it was an honest, open relationship, you would be able to have some contact with him or it wouldn't be so fraught and he wouldn't be so paranoid about the wife uncovering evidence.
Do you find like a lot of the advice you're giving, it comes back to trust and honesty? And
Yeah. It's all situational ethics now. I started the column 25 years ago here in Madison, right down the street, and there was no Google and there was no internet. So a lot of the column was a sex advice column where I would explain simple things. What's a butt plug? How to use a cock ring? How do you get a fist in your butt? Those all have wiki pages now, and I don't need to explain that anymore. So the questions now are all, I did this, they did that, I want this, how do I get that? It's all situational ethics. It's all Solomon stuff. It's all carving babies in half and stacking them up.
Well, and it's become more about relationships in a way.
Yeah,
right?
And it's harder. It's easy to write a what's a butt plug column, and I used to do it whenever I had a hangover. I would just like look for a butt plug question and answer it. Pardon?
How did you do your research for something like
that? For butt plugs?
Without Google?
Well, there were certain questions I had some expertise about. And it was dangerous. Yeah. I wrote in American Savage, my last collection of essays, that it was easier to make mistakes then. The first time I wrote about the clitoris, I put it in the wrong place. It's not on the soft palate, it turns out, which is where mine is, so I just extrapolated from there. And in my defense, to find out where the clitoris was, you had to ask somebody who knew, and I failed to do that, or go look it up in a book in a library. You couldn't just Google clitoris location on IMAP.
Here's got another question from Instagram. How do you feed your confidence? Hold on. How do you feed your confidence to get through your youth, and what recommendations do you have for a group of middle schoolers who want to support a friend in transition?
Oh, how do you feed your confidence to get through your youth? That's hard. I mean, you have to tell yourself to, you do you, right? That beat to death expression. You have to look inside yourself at what gives you joy and what gives you pleasure, and try it so hard. Easy to say, when you're 50 and looking back, to put things in perspective and to tell yourself that this too will pass, and things that seem so important when you're in, a sophomore in high school are going to be completely forgotten, and the people that you're locked in rooms with at that age are going to disappear and stay disappeared if you never got on Facebook. And that can help, and figure out what you want to do and getting out there and doing it, and not being overly concerned with what's popular, because where's that going to get you in the end if you're just doing things because other people are doing them, not because they're the things you want to do or the things that might give you pleasure. If the things that are popular give you pleasure, go do them. No judgment on that either, but just figure out what you want to do, and get up and get out and do it. There was this wonderful interview with Louis C.K. on Fresh Air, and I keep meaning to look up this movie. This is a lot of sites. Louis C.K. on Fresh Air talking about a Spencer Tracy movie from the 50s, where Spencer Tracy's character was talking to a depressed young person about how sort of sad they were and lost they were and directionless they were. And Spencer Tracy's character told that character to go help people because no one feels sorry for themselves when they're helping somebody. So
well, that feeds right into that, how these young people help out their friend in middle school who's transitioning. You just treat your friend like they're still your friend. Sometimes, I was a young queer once, and sometimes when you're coming out or transitioning, you almost become the sort of, you make it the focus of all of your interactions. You want to pick away at that topic and talk about it endlessly. So take direction from your friend. If your friend is really up for talking about their transition and really wants to center their transition, to help them work through it and process it, and also test you guys on your support, then go there. But if your friend is transitioning and is matter of fact about it, or shy about it, just be a friend. Go bowling. Don't go bowling and transitioning. Just go bowling. This is from Stephanie B. on Instagram. So what can parents do to foster confidence in kids, especially girls, when they receive mixed messages at every turn? Girls are often told to be confident and speak up in class, while receiving simultaneously a message to cover their bodies as if being a young female, the young female form, is shameful or a distraction. How do we deal with these contradictions so our kids feel comfortable in their own skin as they grow up?
I am looking up the name of a new book by Peggy Orenstein that you should read. Rather than talking to me, I could pull something out of my butt, but you should read Girls and Sex by Peggy Orenstein. New book, really covering this. You should read Peggy Orenstein's previous book about Disney princesses and Disney princess culture and the warp that's putting on young girls' heads. So I would defer to Peggy Orenstein. Another question that if I got it at the podcast, I would be on the phone with Peggy, getting her to come on and talk about it with me, rather than pretending that I, as a cisgendered old faggot and a man, know best how to tell parent, and the parent of a young man know best how to tell parents of a young girl how to navigate that. That's
well, the best way is to talk to Peggy, right?
Yeah, talk to Peggy.
Okay. Well, that's great. And so this is from Steinquist Guitars on Instagram. And as we push for equality in any endeavor, sexuality, gender, race, it seems that in many cases a divide is created. It's a us versus them. Is this paradigm needed to make progress, or is it possible to focus on uniting factors? That is, we are all human, so our experiences are not so different as we might believe? In other words, do we have to topple the current status quo before erecting, pun intended, a new one?
Yeah, you kind of do. When it comes to, I was very involved in the fight for marriage equality. Somebody had to lose. So, yeah, there is an us versus them there. People came around. That was one of the things in the fight for marriage equality, even if it's in its darkest days, like 2004, when all the anti-gay marriage referenda passed in so many states. People were very much in despair. And again, when in Washington state and New York state at the same time, we had Supreme Court rulings that upheld bans on same-sex marriage in the most bigoted terms. And the bigotry in those decisions really wasn't directed at gay people. It was directed at straight people, because both courts found that marriage should be reserved for heterosexual couples because straight people are terrible people. In both cases, they cited the fact that straight people get pregnant by accident often as the reason they need marriage, whereas same-sex couples, when we have kids, it's on purpose. So we don't need marriage. And straight people need this special inducement of marriage to take care of their kids. If you don't get to have the cake and the wedding and the big dress and the tux and the limo, you're going to leave your kid on the side of a hill to die, unlike the gay couples who are wonderful and prepared and ready. And I looked at those decisions. A lot of people were just really upset. And I looked at those decisions and said, we're winning. We're winning.
So you saw that as the beginning of
if that's their best argument, we suck. You can't have this because we're terrible. If that was their best argument, we were totally winning. And in having those arguments, having those debates, we could see the needle moving in our direction. And that's what's, I think, happening right now with the trans anti-bathroom stuff. They don't realize that they are forcing a conversation about who trans people are and where trans people are and who's really attacking who in bathrooms and everywhere else. And it isn't trans women or trans men. That they're going to lose ultimately. Just like the fight about marriage equality humanized same-sex couples, the fight about where trans people can pee is going to humanize trans people. And they're going to win little victories, but they're going to lose the war. I'm not answering the question. So there are people who have to lose. Us versus them, you don't want it to be too pitched because, and you don't want it to be too obnoxious because people change and people come generally to the side of good and decent and loving and accepting in time. So you don't want that, the zone between that to be, covered with mustard gas and barbed wire, because then nobody's going to move. But somebody loses. Not the National Organization for Marriage, those fucking assholes. I guess I could be like, we're all humans. No, like Brian Brown is a piece of shit. If Brian Brown is a human, I don't want to be a human.
It feels like we're talking about the presidential election.
Yeah, and you have to, sometimes you have to say people who hold that view are bigots. Because people who don't cling to that view are going to eventually go, well, I don't want to stand over here with the bigots in the bigot corner. And that's powerful. So us versus them, we don't want to arbitrarily use it. We have to recognize that it's a dangerous tool because haters like Donald Trump can use it to us versus them on people of color or Mexican immigrants or Muslim refugees or whatever. But us versus them can't be avoided when it's a contentious issue where somebody loses.
And you were married in Canada before Washington legalized gay marriage, but you were also one of the first 11 couples to get married in 2012, right? When Washington State organized it?
One of the first couples to get a marriage license in Washington State.
Okay.
Which we did under false pretenses. Because technically, you can't have a marriage license if you're already married.
But the question they ask you is 7 years before or something.
Yeah, right? But the question they ask you when you apply is not, are you already married, but are you married to anyone else? And we were like, nope. Nope, totally
like it worked out.
Married
Okay.
to anybody else.
Yeah. Okay. How about this one? I feel like we should take some questions from the live stream and the audience soon. So everyone start thinking over here. Okay, so this is from Mike Prager. You have done great work making the case that monogamy doesn't work well for many people and that an open relationship or monogamous relationship may be better. Many of your listeners agree with you, but still most Americans still find monogamous relationships to be wrong and are not open to it at all. How can someone get a partner who has a very traditional view of relationships to open their mind?
Well,
hope I didn't get you in trouble, Mike, here. Okay.
It's, my personal experience when I met my husband, Terry, 21 plus years ago. He was Mr. Monogamy. He was very, 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 very traditional. His attitude was if I cheated on him, it was over. And the conversations we had around that were really forced when 2 years later, we were adopting or initiating the process. And my attitude was, if I cheat on you and that means you're going to leave me, maybe we shouldn't have kids. Because if we define an infidelity as a relationship extinction level event, we're basically adopting a kid into a home that's already broken or almost guaranteed to break up, because the odds that I'm going to cheat or you're going to cheat, which is often the case with the person who's the most hyper about monogamy, is they're projecting, right? They're projecting onto you what they know that they themselves are tempted by and capable of. We're just, we're already divorcing. So the conversation we had was not open relationship and anything goes. The conversation that we had initially was, what happens if one of us cheats? What happens if an infidelity should occur? And that's a conversation I think all couples should have. And I think it's a conversation that it's crucial for couples who want to be monogamous to have, because the stats, the data on infidelity demonstrate that almost every long-term relationship is going to be touched by infidelity. It should be a TV show like the Touched by an Uncle sequel. Touched by infidelity. Almost every relationship. So, we need to rethink how we talk about monogamy.
Is it lack of communication? Is that something behind that?
It's idealism, and I'm in an open relationship with my husband, Terry. We've been open for 17 of the 21 years we've been together. This happens to me constantly, where someone will come up to me and say, apropos of nothing, but sometimes apropos of the conversation that we're having, and will very insultingly say, I couldn't do what you're doing, what you two are doing, because I value love and commitment too highly. And then I'll ask that person, so you're monogamous? Like, yes, every marriage I've been in has been monogamous. And I'm like, okay, so you're more committed to the monogamous ideal than you were to any of the individuals that you committed to when you married them, that you discarded spouses but kept monogamy. So you're monogamous to monogamy, but you're not monogamous to anyone in particular. And that the way we place too much value, too much importance on monogamy. And how do you talk somebody who wants to be in a monogamous relationship into being in an open relationship? I did it, but it took 5 years, and I wasn't hammering away at it because I wanted anything instantly. And he was ultimately the one who initiated opening up our relationship, not me. So knowing what I know now, like, maybe I wouldn't have even partnered with Terry then. I would have found somebody who wanted what I wanted.
Or do you think your relationship is stronger now because of?
Oh, absolutely. And the things we don't talk about when we talk about open relationships, particularly straight people. In queer land, we know this because so many people, once you've told your mother you put dicks in your mouth, telling your friends that your relationship is open is not scary.
Okay.
But for a lot of straight couples who are in open relationships, they're really worried about the stigma. They're worried about judgment. They're worried about how their families are going to react. And so they keep their mouths shut. So we only hear about, usually straight people only hear about an open marriage or an infidelity in somebody else's relationship, or a three-way in somebody else's relationship, if it led to the demise of that relationship. Then we hear about it. So our sample is kind of skewed when it comes to straight people talking about it. So non-monogamy seems like this big, threatening, terrifying thing because it's, in so many instances, seems to precipitate the end of the relationship. And it's just because the people, lots of people in successful open relationships. You just don't know them. It's sort of where gay people were 50 years ago. Everybody knew gay people, but people didn't know they knew them because the gay people they knew weren't out. Everybody who's straight knows people who are in open marriages.
Is this the next sexual frontier for?
Yeah, you see, there's a movement around polyamory. There's a movement around people who are straight and in open relationships coming out. We're now talking about social monogamy versus sexual monogamy, which is important. And it's we're really far afield from the question, but you can have these conversations with your partner about monogamy, and you should be able to say to your partner, let's value our relationship more than we value the monogamous ideal. And one place to start with that conversation is not, I would like to fuck somebody else, but what will happen if one of us cheats? Like, let's commit now that if that should ever happen, and this isn't so you can have a secret, bank shot hall pass to go cheat, but if that should ever happen, I pledge, if you ever cheat on me, I pledge to stay with you and try to work through it, recognizing that there are, you have to judge infidelities on case-by-case basis. Slept with your sister on your wedding night. You probably can't get past that. Yeah. 25 years into a marriage, you got a hand job on a business trip, or she messed around, hooked up, even without intercourse, maybe a hand job with her personal trainer. Like, come on. Come on. That should be something that you should be able to forgive and work past. And monogamy, I will go off forever about monogamy.
Yeah.
And if you're listening
Please
to the podcast, you've heard me say all this. You just like wave your hands if you want me to shut up. We can go on to a different topic. The monogamy is the only human pursuit, endeavor, activity, behavior that we regard as an utter and complete failure if somebody fails at it even once. You can be Shaun White and the world's greatest snowboarder and fall down and get up and still be Shaun White, the world's greatest snowboarder. You can be monogamous for 40 years, fuck somebody else, and you were terrible at that monogamy thing. You are disqualified forever. You should be divorced because you were just awful. We apply that standard to nothing else. You can be a great skier and fall down. You can be a great bicycle rider and fall. You can be the world's greatest chef and burn a goddamn omelet and still be the world's greatest chef. But you can't be monogamous and ever have cheated once without being regarded as a complete failure at that monogamy thing. And that's what destroys relationships. When I talk about this stuff, it's not because I think everybody should be not monogamous. It's because I don't want to see people in good, decent, monogamous relationship where maybe there was one screw up over the decades end that relationship because they value monogamy more highly than they value each other. The things I talk about when I talk about monogamy are not meant to destroy monogamy, but to help people who want monogamy have it and have their partners too, which means in almost all relationships, forgiving and working past and getting through the infidelity that will almost inevitably data touch your relationship.
Well, before we get too much further with things, we do want to talk about your events here in Madison at the Barrymore Theater, and I'm sure you'll be talking more about monogamy. So
come tonight.
Yeah, come tonight. So tonight is
speech
over again. The Savage Love cast, which you have been doing for, like, you were the pioneer in this medium. And
yeah, like 7 years ago or 8 years ago now.
Oh, I thought it was even longer than that.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Not as old as the slight political gabfest, but close.
Well, your website in the seasons thing is very confusing then. So.
It is. Oh,
okay.
yeah, it says like 25 seasons.
Yeah.
Because a season is a half a year. I don't understand it either.
Okay. All right. Well, 7 years is still pretty impressive. And that's happening tonight is awesome. And so what about that? How is that different from your SexCom? Do you usually do them live?
I don't. I do a few live shows a year because it's just fun to chit-chat with an audience. What was the question?
What is it like? Yeah, what's it like? I mean,
it's kind of like this.
Okay, all right, cool.
Taking questions that people submitted on cards so they can ask them anonymously. No microphones in the audience, so I don't have to listen to you people talk.
And that's at 8:30 tonight.
Like, a microphone in the audience in a college town is a dangerous thing. It's like the gun in the first act laid on the table.
Well, we were just at the Trump rally, so a mic in the audience there was very odd. So, okay, well then what about a Hump Film Festival? That has been going on for longer than
11 years, and it's a real passion of mine, that festival.
And that is like an amateur submitted features of...
Amateur porn, with porn divided very broadly, the same way I define sex very broadly. It runs the gamut from erotica and animation to softcore to hardcore, to things that some people watch and think, how is that porn? But it's somebody's porn, if you think about it for a minute. You know, we had a film a few years ago where people were hitting each other with pies in a room covered with tarp, and people were like, that's not porn. And I'm like, Google pie fetish, that's somebody's porn. And what is kind of, you know, Hump's beginning, it actually began like 15 years ago, because we had this idea to start Hump, me and a coworker of mine at The Stranger, and we went to the publisher of The Stranger, Tim Keck, who was one of the co-founders of The Onion, and we said, we want to do a call for submissions in the paper and announce we're having an amateur porn film festival. And he said no for 3 years because he didn't think anyone would actually enter. And so we tweaked it, nothing online, no cameras or phones allowed in the theaters. And we came up with the tagline, porn star for the week. You can be a porn star for the weekend, not for eternity on the internet. Porn star in the theater for the weekend, not for eternity on the internet. And he finally gave us the go-ahead, and the question became, when we announced, just in Seattle, Amateur Porn Film Festival, call for submissions, these films are going to be screened where you live, just a local thing. And the question was, would anyone actually make films and submit them? And the answer was, yeah, they would. So then we booked a movie theater, and the question became, would people come and sit in a movie theater next to strangers in the dark and watch pornography the way your grandparents used to? And the answer was, yeah, they would. And it just took off. And the whole point of Hump was fun, titillating, sex positive. It had no like other mission. But then over the years, this other mission kind of surfaced. The festival kind of did this thing. Initially, the first couple of years, tons of porn aping the tropes of commercial pornography. Tons of the submissions were people trying to make porn like they'd seen online. And those weren't audience favorites. And people quickly got that and started making different kinds of porn and submitting it. And what happens now when you come to Hump, and I invite everybody here and everybody who's listening to please come to Hump.
7 o'clock and 10 o'clock tomorrow, Barrymore.
There's this, we watch the audience because literally we police the audience during the screening because we still promise everyone who participates in Hump that they're going to be porn stars tonight in this theater, not porn stars for eternity on the internet. So we can't have anyone taking photographs or video bootlegs during the screening. And the rule is if there's a cell phone in your hand, we're going to take it away and not give it back and throw it in a wood chipper. And we've done it. Don't fuck with us. We will do it. And so we watch the audience. And this is what you see when you watch the audience. You have this big room with hundreds of people. And you've got gay guys watching lesbian porn and straight guys, sometimes straight bros, subgroup of straight guys, watching hardcore gay porn. And you've got vanilla people watching some off-the-wall kinky porn. And you've got cisgendered people watching porn made by trans people for and about themselves, right? Not trying to cater to some cisgendered trans porn fan. And there are these moments in the first third where people are just knocked back in their seats and the wind is knocked out of them. You're at home alone watching porn. You click on only what you want to see. We click for you at Hump. You don't get to click. And something really kind of magic happens about a third of the way through the screening. This same audience full of people people are covering their eyes, people knocked back in their seats. About a third of the way through, everyone's cheering, everyone's clapping for each film. Nobody's being knocked back in their seats anymore. Even if a film then comes up later that is nothing like the films that came up earlier, that is still something they've never watched before, nobody is having that like, oh my God, reaction anymore. And I think after 11 years of watching the audiences, what's happening is at first, all anybody can see is the difference. Not my plumbing, not the kind of people I'm attracted to, not the body types I prefer, not my kinks. All they see is the difference. And about a third of the way through, half of the way through, everybody can see the similarities, which is this much thicker, heavier layer of, the desire is the same, the passion is the same, the vulnerability is the same, the sense of humor is the same. All of that, the sense of risk and pleasure, all of that is exactly the same. And all that crap that we're so obsessed with, gender, kink, sexual orientation, bodies, all that's just this thin veneer on the top of this massive bedrock of similarities and common humanity. And
it takes like a half an hour and a bunch of audience.
Yeah, and that was never the goal of Hump, right? We're going to people are going to have these kind of subconscious epiphanies watching this film. That's not the goal. It's still not the goal. The primary, it's not some graduate seminar on how you ought to feel about porn. It's a blast. But there's this thing that we see that also happens.
Well, we might have to check that out, Lauren, my wife out there. So
we have so many couples come to Hump one year and then in it the next, just forewarned.
Yeah. All right. Well, we better. Does anyone have a question that's here that has a really good question that's been hold on to? Come up to the microphone. I guess we're running out of time. I knew it was going to be too short. All right. Do you mind stepping up to that mic real quick and then? And thank you, Dan, for
mics in college towns.
Yes.
Just talking about the Hump tour, I was curious. I know that Peggy, the book that you mentioned, she talks a lot about cautioning, especially young girls, from any type of recording. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering if you feel a tension with that, with this amateur porn festival, and I know you try to, keep it under wraps, but if there's any tension there with this concern about the permanence of the internet and then this amateur porn festival, and then also if you've had any problems in the 11 years of it getting out or anything like that.
We've had no problems in the 11 years of Hump with anything getting out, which I hope nobody is taking as a challenge. You will find films made for Hump online, some on YouTube, the softcore, or the animation, and some on XTube and other porn tubes. But those are because the filmmakers themselves released them, not because we released them. As for people exposing themselves, and what Peggy recommends in the book, and I concur with. However, and the caveat is, we are careening toward a time where everybody has dirty pics online, right? People flirt with their phones. All of us carry porn production studios in our pockets. And so I'm looking forward to a time when your leaked nudes are no big deal, which is where we are now with pot. It used to be that one photo of you with a marijuana cigarette could destroy your career. Ginsburg, Supreme Court nominee, had to be withdrawn because there was a picture of him surfaced holding a joint. And now we have a president who smoked pot and wrote about it, and did coke and wrote about it. And that was this, that was the arc of the moral universe, bending toward everybody should stop being so paranoid about pot. And I think we're going to get there on dirty pics. Everyone who's going to be famous 10 years from now already has dirty pics on that they've shared with lovers or friends and will come back to haunt them. Anthony Weiner in 20 years won't have to resign, just like Barack Obama 20 years after Ginsburg did not have to withdraw from the race. And so for me, that's where the tension is. Like, it's still very consequential. People can be slut shamed. People have been driven to suicide around the slut shaming, around their photo surfacing. On the other hand, we're getting to a point where it's just not. I feel like we should have an annual day where everybody releases their dick and twat pics online.
It's tax day, right?
Yeah, maybe also April 15th, so we remember it.
Yeah.
Just so, and as a parent, like, we would be making the world a safer place for our kids by doing that, by making this no big deal. Because one of the reasons it's a big deal is it's shameful and you're outed as a dirty sex pervert. And if we just all admitted we were all already dirty sex perverts, it would be harder to slut shame kids about it. And I would encourage everyone to go to, and not everyone's, I'm not a libertarian, I'm not down with everything that you'll read at Reason from the libertarian point of view, but Reason.com does a lot of really great writing about the laws that are used to punish kids who get caught sexting. And we're putting kids on sex offender registries because they shared a dirty pic only with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and they got caught by an angry parent, or cops just came to school and scooped up phones and looked through phones. And there have been cases where kids have killed themselves because they were going to end up on a sex offender registry or be prosecuted as a child pornographer because they took a picture of themselves. And so in our paranoia about protecting children, we're actually destroying children's lives. And Reason does a great job. Robbie Suave at Reason particularly does a great job documenting this insanity. So I want to get to a place where kids can't be destroyed by a dirty pic, either by harassment from their peers or have their career destroyed later in life because there are dirty pics still out there, and not be targeted by the cops to protect them from themselves.
Allison, can we do one really quick question from the live stream?
Sure. We don't have a ton of questions, but
I failed.
Amanda Dill wants to know, Dan, what Madison restaurant do you miss / look forward to eating at?
Himmelchuli. I go every time. I understand it moved. No, is it still in the same place? Somebody told me it moved. Yay. I will be at Himmelchuli later.
The time is short, but let's give it up for Dan Savage. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hump Fest, that's tomorrow, 7 to 10. He's doing the live podcast at 8:30 at the Barrymore. And thank you to the people watching online and everyone here. So give it up for Dan Savage, everyone.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the Isthmus for hosting me.
Yes, of course. Everyone at Isthmus, thank you.